Clara was an ordinary woman living in a big city filled with flashy cars, towering buildings, and people who seemed to care more about appearances than kindness. She had always been quiet and unassuming, preferring simplicity over extravagance. Her wardrobe consisted of plain clothes, nothing too fancy or attention-grabbing, and she carried herself with humility. But Clara wasn't someone you could easily overlook if you took the time to know her. Beneath her modest exterior lay a sharp mind, a kind heart, and a strong sense of dignity. One sunny afternoon, Clara found herself standing outside one of the most luxurious car dealerships in town. The glass windows sparkled under the sunlight, showcasing rows of gleaming vehicles that looked like they belonged on magazine covers. Inside, sleek sports cars, elegant sedans, and opulent SUVs were displayed as though they were works of art. Clara hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. She wasn't there for herself, but rather on behalf of someone very important, her boss, Evelyn Hartman, a wealthy entrepreneur known for her impeccable taste and influence. As soon as Clara entered the showroom, she felt a shift in the atmosphere. The polished floors reflected the bright lights above, and the air smelled faintly of leather and polish. It was clear this place catered to people accustomed to luxury. However, instead of feeling welcomed, Clara immediately sensed judgment from the salespeople lingering nearby. Their eyes scanned her from head to toe, taking in her simple attire and lack of jewelry. Within moments, their expressions changed from curiosity to indifference. "Can I help you?" asked one of the salesmen, his tone polite but distant. He stood behind a counter, tapping his fingers impatiently against its surface. Clara nodded and approached him, explaining that she was interested in learning more about a specific car, a sleek black sedan parked near the entrance. Its design caught her eye earlier when she passed by the dealership. "I'd like to know some details about it," she said softly, trying to sound confident despite the weight of their dismissive stares. The salesman barely glanced at the car she pointed out. Instead, he gave her a once-over, clearly sizing her up. "That model is quite expensive," he remarked bluntly, as though implying she wouldn't be able to afford it. His tone carried a hint of condescension, making Clara feel small and unworthy. Another salesperson nearby chuckled quietly, adding to her discomfort. They exchanged smirks, silently agreeing that she didn't belong in such an upscale environment. Clara tried to ignore their rudeness and pressed on with her inquiry. "Could you tell me about its features or maybe show me the interior?" she asked, maintaining her composure. But the salesman shrugged nonchalantly. "Sorry, ma'am, but we're busy assisting other clients right now." His excuse was transparent. It was obvious there were no other customers around. Still, Clara didn't argue. She simply smiled politely and stepped aside, hoping someone else might offer assistance. Minutes ticked by, and Clara wandered through the showroom, glancing at the various cars on display. Each vehicle was accompanied by a plaque detailing its specifications but without guidance. Much of the information went over her head. Occasionally, she would catch snippets of conversations between the sales staff and actual buyers, marveling at how warmly they treated those dressed in designer suits or sporting expensive watches. It became painfully clear that these employees judged people based solely on their appearance, assuming wealth equated to worthiness. Despite her growing unease, Clara refused to leave empty-handed. She decided to wait a little longer, hoping someone might eventually acknowledge her presence. Unfortunately, her patience only led to more frustration. One of the younger salesmen even went so far as to mock her openly, whispering something to his colleague that made them both laugh. Though Clara couldn't hear exactly what was said, she didn't need to guess. It was written all over their faces. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of being ignored, Clara realized she wasn't gonna get any answers here. With a heavy sigh, she turned toward the exit, her shoulders slumped in disappointment. As she pushed open the glass door, she paused briefly to glance back at the showroom. For a fleeting moment, she imagined what it might have been like to receive the same level of respect and attention as the other visitors. But reality quickly set in, and she reminded herself why she had come in the first place. Not for herself, but for Evelyn. Little did Clara know, This seemingly insignificant visit would set off a chain of events that would change everything, for her, for the dealership, and for everyone involved. As she walked away from the building, her mind raced with thoughts of how unfair life could sometimes be. Yet deep down, she held on to a quiet determination. This wasn't just about a rejected car purchase. It was about proving that true value lies not in outward appearances but in character, integrity, and the ability to rise above petty judgments. And unbeknownst to the arrogant sales team, their actions had already sealed their fate. Clara's walk back home felt longer than usual. The weight of the dealership's dismissive treatment lingered in her mind, replaying the condescending remarks and cold stares like an endless loop. She couldn't shake off the feeling of being invisible, as though her presence didn't matter simply because she wasn't dressed in designer clothes or carrying a flashy handbag. It was infuriating not just for her but also for what it represented, a world that judged people based on superficial standards rather than their true worth. When Clara arrived at Evelyn Hartman's sprawling estate, she tried to push the incident out of her thoughts. Evelyn was waiting for her in the grand living room, seated on a plush couch while sipping tea from a delicate porcelain cup. The room exuded elegance, with crystal chandeliers casting soft light over polished wooden floors and tasteful artwork adorning the walls. Despite her immense wealth, Evelyn had always valued practicality and warmth over extravagance, which was one of the reasons Clara admired her so much. "Back already?" Evelyn asked with a curious smile, setting down her teacup. She leaned forward slightly, her sharp eyes studying Clara's expression. "You look like something's bothering you." Clara hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to share the details of her humiliating experience. Evelyn was known for her no-nonsense attitude and fierce loyalty to those she cared about, and Clara didn't want to seem overly sensitive. But Evelyn noticed the slight frown on Clara's face and pressed further. "What happened? Did they not have anything suitable?" Taking a deep breath, Clara recounted the entire ordeal, the dismissive sales staff, the mocking laughter, and the blatant disregard for her questions. As she spoke, Evelyn's expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief, then to quiet anger. Her jaw tightened, and her fingers drummed lightly against the armrest of the couch. When Clara finished, there was a brief silence before Evelyn finally broke it. "They did what?" Evelyn's voice was calm, almost eerily so, but anyone who knew her well could detect the storm brewing beneath the surface. She stood up, pacing slowly across the room as she processed the story. "Let me get this straight. They treated you like you weren't even worth their time because of how you were dressed?" Clara nodded, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration. "I don't think they expected me to be shopping for someone else," she admitted. "But still, it shouldn't matter. They're supposed to treat every customer with respect." Evelyn stopped pacing and turned to face Clara, her piercing gaze locking onto hers. "You're absolutely right," she said firmly. "This isn't just about you, it's about principle. People can't keep getting away with treating others poorly based on assumptions. And trust me, if I know anything, it's that actions speak louder than words." For years, Evelyn had built her empire by refusing to tolerate disrespect or incompetence. She prided herself on surrounding herself with people who shared her values: integrity, hard work, and fairness. Clara, in particular, had earned Evelyn's trust through her dedication and resourcefulness. Over time, the two women had developed a bond that went beyond employer and employee. They were friends, confidants, and partners in navigating life's challenges. As Evelyn mulled over the situation, a plan began to form in her mind. She wasn't going to let this slide, not when it involved someone as important to her as Clara. "Listen," she said, her tone resolute. "I want you to tell me everything about that dealership. The name, the location, and especially the names of those so-called professionals. We're going to handle this properly." Clara blinked in surprise. "Handle it? What do you mean?" Evelyn smiled faintly, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. "You'll see, just leave it to me." The next morning, Evelyn made a few phone calls. First, she contacted her personal assistant, a different one who handled logistics, to gather information about the dealership's reputation and ownership. Then she reached out to some of her influential friends in the automotive industry, casually mentioning the poor service Clara had experienced. Word traveled fast among the elite circles Evelyn moved in, and by lunchtime, whispers of the dealership's unprofessional behavior were circulating like wildfire. Meanwhile, Evelyn, prepared for her next move, she instructed Clara to accompany her to the dealership the following day, ensuring she looked presentable but not overly extravagant. "We don't need to dress up to prove our worth," Evelyn explained. "But we will make sure they remember us." That evening, Evelyn sat down with Clara to discuss the broader implications of what had happened. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "this kind of thing happens all the time. People judge others based on appearances, background, or whatever else suits their narrative. It's lazy and unfair, and it creates barriers where none should exist." Clara nodded, reflecting on her own experiences. Growing up in a modest household, she had often encountered similar biases. Whether it was applying for jobs, attending networking events, or even walking into certain stores, she had learned early on that society placed too much emphasis on outward signs of success. But Evelyn's perspective offered a fresh lens, one rooted in empowerment rather than resentment. "You deserve better," Evelyn continued, her voice firm yet compassionate. "And I'm not just saying that because you work for me. You've always carried yourself with grace and dignity regardless of how others treat you. That takes strength, Clara. Don't ever forget that." Clara felt a lump rise in her throat. For years she had kept her head down, focusing on doing her job without drawing attention to herself. But Evelyn's words reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, that self-worth wasn't defined by other people's opinions. Slowly, a spark of confidence ignited within her, fueled by Evelyn's unwavering support. By the end of their conversation, Clara felt more determined than ever to confront the situation head-on. She realized this wasn't just about teaching the dealership a lesson. It was about standing up for herself and sending a message to anyone who underestimated her. With Evelyn by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. As night fell, Evelyn finalized her plans, her mind racing with possibilities. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Clara, but for the arrogant dealership that had underestimated them both. Whatever happened, one thing was certain: they wouldn't soon forget the names Evelyn Hartman and Clara. The next morning, the air buzzed with anticipation as Evelyn Hartman stepped out of her gleaming white Rolls-Royce Cullinan. The car's pristine exterior caught the sunlight, reflecting it like a beacon of luxury and power. Dressed in a sharp, navy blue suit paired with a crisp white blouse, Evelyn exuded confidence and authority. Her sunglasses shielded her piercing eyes, but her presence alone commanded attention. As she stepped onto the pavement, the dealership staff scrambled to greet her, their earlier indifference replaced by frantic energy. Clara followed close behind, her demeanor calm and composed. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, a knee-length skirt, a tailored blazer, and a pair of comfortable flats. While she didn't match Evelyn's high-end fashion, her quiet poise made her stand out in her own way. To anyone watching, it was clear that Clara wasn't just an assistant. She was someone important to Evelyn, someone whose opinion mattered. As they entered the showroom, all eyes turned toward them. The once dismissive sales team now tripped over themselves to welcome Evelyn. "Good morning, ma'am," one of the younger salesmen greeted enthusiastically, his tone dripping with exaggerated politeness. Another hurried forward, offering Evelyn a glass of sparkling water, which she declined with a polite wave of her hand. Evelyn removed her sunglasses, revealing her sharp gaze as she surveyed the room. Every detail, the polished floors, the gleaming cars, the nervous smiles of the staff, was noted. Then, without hesitation, she addressed the manager, who had rushed to her side. "I'm here to purchase a few vehicles," she announced, her voice calm but authoritative. "But first, I'd like to ensure your customer service meets my standards." The manager, a middle-aged man with slicked-back hair and an expensive watch, nodded vigorously. "Of course, Ms. Hartman," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "We pride ourselves on providing exceptional service to all our clients." He glanced briefly at Clara, recognition flickering across his face. It was obvious he remembered her from the previous day, though he dared not mention it. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Is that so?" she asked, coolly. "Because yesterday my trusted advisor visited this establishment and was treated quite poorly. She was ignored, dismissed, and even mocked by your staff. Would you call that exceptional service?" The manager's face paled. He stammered, struggling to find the right words. I assure you, ma'am, we hold our team to the highest standards. If there was any lapse in professionalism, it will be addressed immediately." Evelyn studied him for a moment, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. Finally, she spoke again, her tone icy. "See that it is. Now let's move. Onto the cars. But before we proceed, I want my advisor involved in every step of the process. Is that clear?" "Absolutely, ma'am," the manager replied, sweat forming on his brow. He turned to Clara, forcing a smile. "Ms. Clara, it's such a pleasure to see you again. Please allow me to assist you personally." Clara met his gaze, her expression unreadable. She didn't say much, allowing Evelyn to take the lead. But inside she felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. Satisfaction because justice was being served, and unease because she hated being at the center of conflict. Still, she reminded herself that this wasn't just about her, it was about proving a point. With the formalities out of the way, Evelyn began browsing the inventory. She moved through the showroom with purpose, pausing occasionally to examine specific models. Her interests seemed genuine, but her actions were calculated. She asked detailed questions about performance, customization options, and maintenance costs, ensuring the staff stayed on their toes. Each time she spoke, she subtly referenced Clara's role in the decision-making process. "This sedan looks impressive," Evelyn remarked, gesturing to a sleek silver Mercedes-Maybach S-Class. "What do you think, Clara? Would this suit my collection?" Clara stepped forward, playing along seamlessly. "It's certainly luxurious," she said, her tone measured. "But I'd recommend checking the interior features first. Comfort is key for long drives." The sales team nodded eagerly, agreeing with everything Clara said. Gone were the smirks and whispers from the previous day. Instead, they hung on her every word, desperate to make amends. It was almost comical how quickly their attitudes had shifted, but neither Evelyn nor Clara found it amusing. They knew better than to trust shallow apologies. After inspecting several cars, Evelyn narrowed her choices down to 3: the Bentley Continental GT, the Mercedes-Maybach S-Class, and another, Rolls-Royce Phantom. Each vehicle represented the pinnacle of automotive engineering, and together they amounted to a staggering sum. Yet Evelyn didn't hesitate. She finalized her selections with ease, making it clear that money was no object. Throughout the process, the dealership staff remained on edge, their behavior oscillating between obsequiousness and panic. They fawned over Evelyn, offering complimentary upgrades and discounts in hopes of salvaging their reputation. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued to push their limits, asking pointed questions about their customer service policies and training programs. One point she turned to the manager and said, "You know, I've always believed that how you treat people says more about you than anything else. Yesterday, you judged my advisor based on her appearance. Today, you're bending over backward because of mine. Perhaps next time you'll remember that respect should never depend on outward appearances." The manager flushed red, unable to respond. His embarrassment was palpable, and the rest of the staff exchanged uneasy glances. Evelyn's words cut deep, exposing the flaws in their system and leaving them scrambling for solutions. By the time the paperwork was complete, the dealership had not only lost thousands in potential commissions due to their initial rudeness, but also gained a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. For Clara, the experience was bittersweet. On one hand, she felt vindicated knowing the staff had been humbled. On the other, she couldn't help but wonder how many others had faced similar treatment and walked away without recourse. As Evelyn and Clara prepared to leave, the manager approached them one last time. "Thank you for giving us a second chance. he said, his voice laced with desperation. We'll do everything we can to improve our service moving forward. Evelyn regarded him silently for a moment before nodding. See that you do, she said simply. Then, with a final glance at the staff, she walked out of the showroom, Clara by her side. Outside, the Rolls-Royce waited patiently under the sun. As Evelyn climbed into the driver's seat, she glanced at Clara, who stood beside the passenger door. Well? She asked with a sly smile. How did that feel? Clara chuckled softly, shaking her head. Honestly, a little surreal. But necessary. Evelyn grinned, starting the engine. Good. Because this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Let's go home and celebrate. You've earned it. As the car pulled away, Clara settled into the plush leather seat, feeling a sense of closure wash over her. The day had been exhausting but empowering, reminding her that true strength came not from seeking revenge but from standing up for what was right. And with Evelyn by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Rolls-Royce glided smoothly through the city streets, its quiet engine humming like a well-rehearsed symphony. Inside, Evelyn sat behind the wheel, her confident hands guiding the car with precision. Clara, seated beside her, gazed out the window, watching the world blur past. Despite the calm exterior she projected, her mind was racing. She replayed the events of the morning over and over again, the nervous fumbling of the sales staff, the manager's desperate attempts to salvage their reputation, and Evelyn's cutting remarks that left them speechless. It was satisfying, yes, but it also stirred something deeper within her, a growing realization that this moment could be more than just personal vindication. As they approached Evelyn's estate, Clara finally broke the silence. Thank you, she said softly, turning to face Evelyn. Her voice carried genuine gratitude, though it trembled slightly. I don't think I've ever seen anyone take a stand like that for me. Evelyn glanced at her briefly before returning her focus to the road. You don't need to thank me, she replied matter-of-factly. What happened today wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. Those people judged you without knowing who you are or what you're capable of. That's unacceptable, and they needed to learn that lesson. Clara nodded, absorbing the words. She had always admired Evelyn's ability to cut through pretense and get straight to the heart of things. But today, Evelyn had gone beyond teaching others a lesson. She had empowered Clara in ways she hadn't anticipated. For so long, Clara had brushed off dismissive behavior, telling herself it didn't matter. Yet now, sitting in this luxurious car alongside one of the most influential women in the city, she felt a newfound sense of worthiness bubbling beneath the surface. When they arrived back at the estate, Evelyn parked the Rolls-Royce in the circular driveway. Before stepping out, she turned to Clara with a mischievous glint in her eye. So how does it feel to have the upper hand? To know that those so-called professionals were scrambling to make amends because of you? Clara hesitated, searching for the right words. It feels strange, she admitted. Part of me is glad we stood up for ourselves, but another part wonders if they'll actually change. People can apologize all they want, but will they really treat others differently next time? Evelyn sighed, her expression softening. That's the tricky thing about accountability, she said, thoughtfully. Some people will learn from their mistakes while others won't. All we can do is plant the seed and hope it grows. What matters most is that you understand your value, Clara. Don't let anyone make you question it, not even yourself. Clara smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Evelyn's words resonated deeply, echoing the same message she had been trying to internalize for years. Perhaps this experience wasn't just about teaching the dealership a lesson. Perhaps it was about reminding Clara of her own strength and resilience. Later that afternoon, Evelyn invited Clara to join her in the garden. The sprawling green space behind the estate was one of Evelyn's favorite spots, a peaceful retreat where she often went to reflect. They sat together on a wrought iron bench beneath the shade of a large oak tree, sipping iced tea as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them. I've been thinking, Evelyn began, setting her glass down. This whole situation has given me an idea. You've been working for me for years, handling everything from scheduling to negotiations, and you've done it brilliantly. But I think it's time you considered branching out on your own. Clara blinked in surprise. Branching out? What do you mean? Evelyn leaned back, crossing her legs casually. You have skills, Clara. Skills that go far beyond being an assistant. Your attention to detail, your ability to read people, your knack for problem solving. These are qualities that would make you an incredible consultant. Imagine helping businesses improve their client relations or training teams to handle difficult situations. You'd thrive in a role like that. Clara stared at her, unsure how to respond. The idea of starting her own business had never crossed her mind. She had always seen herself as someone who worked behind the scenes, quietly supporting others. The thought of stepping into the spotlight felt overwhelming and terrifying. I don't know, Evelyn, she said hesitantly. I'm not sure. I'm ready for something like that. Besides, who would hire me? I'm not exactly well known. Evelyn chuckled, shaking her head. That's where you're wrong. You underestimate yourself, Clara. Think about it. You've spent years managing my affairs, dealing with high-profile clients and navigating complex scenarios. That kind of experience speaks volumes. And as for getting started, I'd be happy to introduce you to some of my contacts. Trust me, once people see what you can do, they'll line up to work with you. Clara mulled over Evelyn's suggestion, her mind swirling with possibilities. It was true that she had accumulated a wealth of knowledge and expertise during her time as Evelyn's assistant. But the idea of striking out on her own felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Could she really pull it off? Seeing the uncertainty in Clara's eyes, Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You don't have to decide right away, she said gently. Take some time to think about it, but promise me one thing. Stop doubting yourself. You're stronger than you realize, and you deserve to chase after opportunities that excite you. Over the next few days, Clara found herself reflecting on Evelyn's words more and more. She began jotting down ideas for a potential consulting business, sketching out plans and brainstorming names. At first, the process felt daunting, but slowly, a spark of excitement began to grow. She imagined herself leading workshops, mentoring young professionals, and helping companies build better relationships with their clients. The vision became clearer with each passing day. Meanwhile, news of Evelyn's visit to the dealership spread quickly throughout the industry. Whispers of the incident reached other luxury brands, sparking conversations about the importance of treating every customer with respect. Some praised Evelyn for holding the dealership accountable, while others criticized the staff for their blatant rudeness. Regardless of the opinions, one thing was certain. The dealership had suffered a blow to its reputation, and it would take significant effort to repair it. Back at the showroom, the manager scrambled to implement changes. He organized mandatory training sessions for his team, emphasizing the importance of professionalism and inclusivity. Posters with slogans like "Every customer matters" were hung on the walls, and new policies were introduced to ensure no one else would be treated unfairly. While these measures were a step in the right direction, many of the employees couldn't shake the memory of Evelyn's icy glare or Clara's quiet composure. They had learned their lesson the hard way, but only time would tell if it stuck. For Clara, the transformation was subtler yet equally profound. She began carrying herself with a newfound confidence, no longer shrinking under judgmental stares or harsh comments. When she walked into stores or attended events, she held her head high, remembering Evelyn's reminder that true value comes from within. And though she still had moments of doubt, she reminded herself of the lessons she had learned, that kindness, integrity, and self-respect are the ultimate markers of success. One evening, as Clara sat at her desk drafting a proposal for her consulting business, she paused to reflect on how far she had come. Just weeks ago, she had been dismissed and disrespected simply because of how she looked. Now she was preparing to embark on a journey that celebrated her strengths and challenged her limits. It wasn't going to be easy, but she knew she had the support of someone who believed in her wholeheartedly. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Evelyn stood in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of wine. "How's it going?" she asked, handing one to Clara. Clara took a sip, smiling, gratefully. "It's going well," she replied. "I'm still figuring things out, but I feel hopeful. Like maybe this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Evelyn raised her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," she said warmly, "and to proving that no one should ever underestimate you again." They clinked glasses, the sound ringing, out like a promise. A promise that Clara would continue to rise above adversity, embrace her potential, and inspire others along the way. Weeks turned into months, and the ripple effects of Evelyn's visit to the dealership continued to unfold. The once buzzing showroom now carried an air of tension, as though the staff were walking on eggshells. The mandatory training sessions had been implemented, but they did little to erase the sting of embarrassment that lingered among the employees. Every time a customer walked in wearing simple clothes or driving an older car, the salespeople went out of their way to assist them. Sometimes, even too enthusiastically, it was clear they were overcompensating, desperate to avoid another incident like the one involving Evelyn Hartman. For the manager, things were particularly challenging. He spent countless hours reviewing customer feedback forms, monitoring interactions between his team and clients, and personally apologizing to anyone who seemed dissatisfied. Despite these efforts, whispers about the dealership's poor judgment continued to circulate in elite social circles. Evelyn's name carried weight, and her critique of their behavior had become a cautionary tale for other luxury businesses. Competitors seized the opportunity to highlight their own commitment to inclusivity, leaving the dealership struggling to regain its footing in the market. Meanwhile, Clara's life took a dramatic turn. Inspired by Evelyn's encouragement, she began laying the groundwork for her consulting firm. At first, it felt overwhelming. She spent late nights researching industry trends, drafting business plans, and designing marketing materials. But with each step forward, her confidence grew. Evelyn remained a constant source of support, introducing Clara to influential contacts and offering advice whenever needed. Slowly but surely, Clara built a network of professionals eager to work with her. Her first major breakthrough came when a boutique hotel chain reached out, seeking guidance on improving their guest experience. The owner, a friend of Evelyn's, had heard about Clara's background and wanted her expertise. Thrilled yet nervous, Clara threw herself into the project, conducting interviews with staff members, analyzing customer reviews, and identifying areas for improvement. Her recommendations were thoughtful and practical, earning rave reviews from the hotel management. Word of her success spread quickly, leading to more inquiries from businesses across various industries. As Clara's reputation grew, so did her sense of purpose. She found joy in helping others navigate challenges similar to those she had faced. Whether it was coaching employees on effective communication or advising executives on creating inclusive environments, Clara approached every task with empathy and determination. Her quiet demeanor masked a fierce passion for making a difference, and people couldn't help but admire her dedication. One day, while attending a networking event hosted by one of Evelyn's colleagues, Clara encountered someone unexpected, the very same manager from the dealership. He spotted her across the room and hesitated before approaching, clearly unsure how she would react. When he finally mustered the courage to introduce himself, his voice trembled slightly. "Ms. Clara," he said, extending a hand. I just wanted to say thank you." Clara raised an eyebrow, surprised by his words. "Thank you? For what?" Well, for everything," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. "After what happened at the dealership, we realized how much we needed to change. Your visit, and Ms. Hartman's, forced us to take a hard look at ourselves. We've made mistakes, but we're trying to do better. I know it won't undo what happened, but I hope you can see that we're serious about improving." Clara studied him for a moment, noting the sincerity in his eyes. She didn't respond immediately, instead taking a sip of her drink as she considered his words. Finally, she spoke. "Change isn't easy," she said evenly, "but it's necessary. If you're truly committed to treating everyone with respect, then I'm glad to hear it. Just remember, it's not about appearances or checking boxes. It's about genuinely valuing people for who they are. The manager nodded vigorously. Absolutely. That's exactly what we're aiming for. Though Clara didn't offer forgiveness outright, she appreciated his effort. It was proof that accountability could lead to growth, even in the most unlikely places. Back at home, Clara shared the encounter with Evelyn, who listened intently before offering her perspective. It takes courage to admit fault, Evelyn said thoughtfully. Not everyone is willing to do that. Give him credit where it's due, but also hold him accountable if he falls short again. Real change doesn't happen overnight. Clara agreed, realizing that holding people accountable wasn't about punishment, it was about ensuring progress. This philosophy guided her work moving forward, shaping the way she interacted with clients and colleagues alike. As her consulting business flourished, Clara began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and workshops. Initially hesitant, she eventually embraced the opportunity to share her story. Standing on stage, microphone in hand, she spoke candidly about the importance of treating others with dignity and respect. Her speeches resonated deeply with audiences, many of whom had experienced similar moments of being underestimated or dismissed. You don't have to be wealthy or powerful to deserve respect, Clara often said during her talks. Respect is a fundamental human right, regardless of appearance, background, or circumstances. And when we fail to extend it to others, we diminish not only them but also ourselves. Her message struck a chord, earning her widespread acclaim. Media outlets began profiling her journey, highlighting how she had transformed adversity into opportunity. Yet despite the growing recognition, Clara remained grounded. She knew her success wasn't just about personal achievement, it was about inspiring others to rise above bias and embrace their true worth. Evelyn watched proudly as Clara blossomed into a confident leader. Though she had always believed in Clara's potential, even she was amazed by how far she had come. One evening, as they sat together in Evelyn's garden, she raised a glass in celebration. To proving doubters wrong, Evelyn said with a smile, and to showing the world that kindness and integrity are the ultimate measures of success. Clara clinked her glass against Evelyn's, her heart swelling with gratitude. To second chances, she added softly, and to finding strength in the face of adversity. Together they toasted to a future filled with promise, a future shaped by lessons learned, barriers broken, and dreams realized. Clara's journey was far from over, but she knew she had the tools and support to keep moving forward. And as she looked ahead, she couldn't help but feel hopeful, not just for herself, but for anyone brave enough to challenge the status quo and redefine what it means to succeed. Months had passed since Clara's encounter with the dealership, and her life had transformed in ways she never imagined. What began as a humiliating experience had become a catalyst for growth, not just for herself, but for countless others whose lives she touched through her work. Her consulting business, Clara Consulting Asrid, was thriving. Clients praised her ability to foster meaningful connections, improve workplace culture, and create environments where everyone felt valued. From small startups to established corporations, Clara's influence was undeniable. Her story became a beacon of hope for those who had faced similar challenges. People reached out to her via email and social media, sharing their own experiences of being judged or dismissed based on appearances. Some sought advice. Others simply wanted to express gratitude for her courage in speaking up. Clara responded to each message personally, offering words of encouragement and reminding them that their worth wasn't defined by someone else's opinion. One particularly memorable interaction came from a young woman named Mia, who worked as an intern at a prestigious law firm. In her letter, Mia described how her colleagues often overlooked her contributions because she dressed casually and drove an old car. "Reading about your journey made me realize I'm not alone," Mia wrote. "It gave me the strength to keep going, even when people underestimate me." Clara replied warmly, urging Mia to focus on her talents and let her work speak for itself. She ended the message with a simple yet powerful reminder. Your value lies within you, not in what others see on the surface. As Clara continued to inspire others, she also inspired change within industries. Luxury brands took notice of her advocacy for inclusivity and began re-evaluating their customer service practices. High-end hotels implemented training programs, emphasizing empathy and respect. Car dealerships, once notorious for snobbish behavior, started prioritizing genuine connection over superficial assumptions. The ripple effect of Clara's quiet rebellion spread far and wide, proving that one person's actions could spark meaningful transformation. The dealership where it all began underwent significant changes as well. Under new leadership, the establishment adopted a motto: "Every guest deserves excellence." Employees were encouraged to treat every visitor with warmth and professionalism, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. Customer satisfaction scores improved dramatically, and while the shadow of Evelyn's visit still loomed, the staff embraced the opportunity to rebuild trust. For Clara, this marked a turning point. She realized that teaching lessons wasn't about shaming or punishing. It was about creating opportunities for growth. When she received an invitation to give a keynote speech at an international conference on workplace ethics, she accepted without hesitation. The event brought together leaders from diverse fields, all eager to learn how to cultivate cultures of respect and inclusivity. Standing on stage before hundreds of attendees, Clara shared her story authentically and vulnerably. She recounted the day she walked into the dealership, feeling invisible and unworthy. She spoke about Evelyn's unwavering support and the pivotal role it played in helping her reclaim her confidence. And she emphasized the importance of treating others with dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from. When we judge people based on outward appearances, we miss the chance to connect with their humanity, Clara said, her voice steady and sincere. We rob ourselves of relationships, ideas, and perspectives that could enrich our lives, but when we choose kindness instead of assumption, we open doors to endless possibilities. Her words resonated deeply with the audience. Applause erupted as she concluded her speech, and many attendees approached her afterward to thank her for her insights. One man, a CEO of a major tech company, confessed that he had once been guilty of making snap judgments about employees and customers. "Your story has changed my perspective," he admitted. "I'm committed to doing better. For myself, my team, and the people we serve." Back home, Clara reflected on how much her life had evolved. She no longer felt like the timid woman who had walked into that showroom months ago. Instead, she saw herself as a leader, a mentor, and a changemaker. Yet despite her success, she remained humble, always remembering the values that guided her: integrity, compassion, and resilience. Evelyn, too, marveled at Clara's transformation. Watching her protégé grow into such a confident and impactful figure filled her with pride. One evening, as they sat together in Evelyn's living room, sipping tea and reminiscing about the past year, Evelyn raised a question. "What's next for you, Clara?" she asked curiously. "You've accomplished so much already, but I know you're not done yet." Clara smiled thoughtfully, swirling her teacup gently. "Honestly, I'm not sure," she admitted. "But I think there's still more work to be done. Maybe I'll write a book or start a foundation to help underrepresented voices in the workplace. Or maybe I'll focus on mentoring young professionals. Whatever it is, I want to continue making a difference." Evelyn nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit. Keep pushing boundaries, Clara. You've already shown the world what's possible when you stand up for yourself and others. Now imagine what else you can achieve." With Evelyn's encouragement fueling her ambition, Clara began exploring new avenues. She collaborated with organizations dedicated to empowering women and minorities in male-dominated industries. She partnered with educators to develop workshops for students entering the workforce, teaching them how to navigate bias and advocate for themselves. Each project reinforced her belief that true success wasn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the positive impact one left on the world. Years later, when Clara looked back on her journey, she couldn't help but smile. That fateful day at the dealership had been painful, yes, but it had also been a gift. It taught her the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for oneself, and the profound influence one person could have on the world around them. Most importantly, it reminded her that everyone deserved to be treated with respect, kindness, and dignity. And so, Clara's legacy lived on, not just in the businesses she helped transform or the lives she touched, but in the countless individuals who carried forward her message. They learned to challenge assumptions, embrace diversity, and celebrate the inherent worth of every human being. Through her quiet determination and unwavering integrity, Clara proved that even the simplest acts of defiance could ignite extraordinary change. In the end, Clara's story wasn't just about cars or luxury. It was about humanity. It was a testament to the fact that no matter how small or insignificant we might feel, we all have the power to make a difference. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment of courage to set the wheels of change in motion.